If you want to learn how to develop plugins for Minecraft, you clicked on the right video. Today, I'll be teaching you how to get started with developing plugins. Hopefully, by the end of this series, you'll be an expert at plugin development. One thing to note is that at the time of making this video, 1.17 Spigot is not out yet. When it is though, it's easy to upgrade your plugin. With that said, why should you trust me? Well, I have recreated 2 of Hypixel's game modes, not 1 but 2. Bed Wars and Sky Wars, by myself. Along with that, I've been developing plugins for probably over a year now. So yeah, it's safe to say that I can probably at least teach you most of what you'll need to know to develop Minecraft plugins. I'm not going to tell you guys to subscribe right now since I know that gets annoying. However, let's make a deal. If this video helps you out in any way, you guys have to go and hit like on this video. Maybe even subscribe too if you feel like helping me out even more. If it doesn't help you, go ahead and hit dislike on the video. I give you full permission to do it. Anyways, let's jump into the video. One final thing before we begin is that this video is not a setup guide. There are plenty of those on the internet, so you should be able to follow one of those to install IntelliJ. With that said, I broke up this video into 3 parts. Part 1 is preparing our environment, like creating our dependencies folder and downloading all of our dependencies, creating our server, and creating our IntelliJ project. Part 2 is creating our main class and adding a plugin.yml. And part 3 is our onEnable and onDisable, and sending a basic enable message. That sounds short, but it'll actually take quite a bit. So guys, let's jump into it. So for part 1, which is preparing our environment, the first thing we're going to want to do is open up File Explorer or Finder, or just if you're on Linux, open up your file manager, and we're going to want to go to a folder that we want to create our plugins in. So for me, it's on my D drive and then YouTube. And right here, as you can see, the folder's empty. It should be for you guys too. This should just be a new blank folder that we want to use to store all of our plugins. So I'm going to right click new folder, and name this folder dependencies, just like that. And this folder is going to be for storing all of our, you guessed it, dependencies. So I'm going to go into this folder, and as you can see, it is empty. Next up, just open up a web browser. I'm going to be using Chrome for this video, and navigate to the Bungee Cord download page. Now, we'll only be using one of the 3 things we want to download in today's video, but they could come in handy in the future, so we want to keep them in our dependencies folder just in case. So I'm going to copy the link to the Bungee Cord website and paste it right here. And as you can see, it comes to this page, Maven Project Bungee Cord, and we want to find the latest successful artifacts. It's worth noting that you can try to find an older build of Bungee Cord if you don't want to develop for the latest version of Minecraft. But for now, I'm just going to click on this, bungeecord.jar, and click keep. Although I've already downloaded it, so I'm not going to download again. You guys can just click keep and let that download. Next up, I want to download the Spigot API. So again, I'm going to copy this URL, which will also be in the description, and click on paste and go to, and then the URL. Now it'll come up with this page, and I want to find the version of Minecraft I'm developing for. Since I downloaded the latest version of Bungee Cord, I also am going to download the latest version of the Spigot API, which for me at the moment is 1.16.5, but it'll probably be 1.17 something by the time Spigot gets updated to 1.17. So I'm going to click on this, scroll down, and find the nearest just .jar file. Then I'm going to click on it, and then I would click keep, but I've already downloaded it, so I'm just going to click discard. Anyways, finally, we want to download Craft Bucket, which is the last component of all of these dependencies. So I'm going to copy it, and click paste and go to, and then go to this gitbucket.org/download/craftbucket. Again, link in the description, and just download the latest release. Technically, you could also download a different version if you want to develop for a different version, but since we've already downloaded the latest version for the other 2, we want to download it here too. So click on this, and then I would click keep, but again, I've already downloaded it, so I'm just going to click discard. So now once you've already downloaded everything, I'm going to click Ctrl J to go to all of my downloads. And as you can see, I have these 3 files right here, which are what we just downloaded. So I'm going to open up this dependencies folder, drag it to the right half of my screen, go here, and then drag in the craft bucket, Spigot API, and Bungee Core jar files all into this window. I'm also going to rename this to just Spigot API 1.16.5 for simplicity reasons, just that it's easier to see, because all the others are named like that, except for Bungee Core doesn't have that. You can add that to the end if you want. I'm just going to keep it like this though. Next up, we want to go back to the last folder, which for me is just YouTube, and right click new folder, and I'm going to name this folder server. This is where our Minecraft server is going to be for testing things and just stuff like that. So now I'm going to double click on this, open up your web browser again, and then this time type in papermc.io/downloads. And obviously this link will be in the description, but I'm just going to download the latest build of this that corresponds to the API versions that we downloaded before in the last step, which for me is 1.16.5, so I'm going to download the latest build of 1.16.5. However, if you want to develop for an older version, just scroll down, click on Legacy, and then you can find the version that you want to develop for. But I'm just going to click on this latest build right here, and then click Keep, although since I've already downloaded it, again, I'm just going to click Discard. So now I'm going to navigate to my downloads page again, which is just Control-J on Chrome, or on a Mac, I think it's Command-J, but whichever web browser you use, just find your downloads, or go to your downloads folder, and drag your paper 1.16.5 jar file into your server folder. What you'll also want to do is right click here and click rename, and just rename this to server. So it's server.jar, because that'll just make it way easier and way simpler, especially because the next file we're going to create will be much easier to create if we already have this renamed, so that you don't have to like type out a long file name. But anyways, I'm going to close out of Chrome because that's all we'll need it for now. And we're going to want to create this next file. Now there's one thing I want to do before I create this next file, which is actually just clicking on View. And then right here, checking this box, File Name Extensions. Making sure that's checked, we can move on to the next step. And also guys, if you have another operating system, I'm guessing this will be done by default. You guys can look it up. If not, I believe on Linux it's already done by default. I don't know about Mac OS, but I think this setting should already be enabled by default. What this setting does is just let you rename files along with their extension, not just the name of them, so you can change it, which is exactly what we want to do here. What we want to do is right click, new text document, and just create a new file and call it run.bat. Press enter, ignore this warning, it doesn't matter, and click yes. And then right click this and click edit, and now we have this opened up in a text editor. For me it's Notepad, but whichever text editor you guys have as your default. Now this is the step where it's going to actually be a little bit different depending on your operating system. You guys can look this up for Mac OS and Linux. There should be separate files for this, but for Windows users it should be pretty easy. So I have 2 codes down in the description. One of them is if you have 8 GB or less of RAM, and one is if you have more than 8 GB. Now, I don't want it to sound like the 8 GB or less of RAM code is actually worse. It is definitely not, and for this plugin, it's plenty, but if you wanted more plugins in the future, then you'd likely want to switch to the more than 8 GB code. But I'm going to copy the more than 8 GB code into this text document because I do actually have more than 8 GB of RAM in my computer. And then I'm just going to do Control S to save it. And what this code is doing is it's just allocating 4 GB of RAM to Minecraft, specifically just the Minecraft server. Now, I don't exactly know what this part does. I didn't really study up on that. I do know that this is the amount of RAM allocated to the server though. And now with that all done, I just want to close out of this and double click this. Now this is where it comes back to just everyone can do this. Once you've created your run file, which is just different per operating system, but once you figured that out and created it, as you can see, it'll give me an error here saying I need to agree to the EULA in order to run the server. So I'm going to click any key here, and double click on this EULA file. Next, I'm going to change this to true, indicating that I've agreed to the EULA. Now, you guys can like read through that and stuff if you want. I'm just going to agree to it for now. I could be signing my life away. I have no idea. But I'm just going to close out of that and run this again. And now that error is just completely gone, and it'll hopefully create this whole server for us. And it's giving me a little warning about my outdated version of Java. I'll update it after this video. It doesn't need to worry about that. But anyways, right now I'm just going to type in stop into the console and press any key to continue. Give it a second. There we go. And as you can see, it's created all of these folders, but the one we're concerned about is our plugins folder. Now, if your plugins folder doesn't have this bstats folder, that's completely fine. Mine does. I don't know if that's a paper specific thing or if that's just all Minecraft server versions, but if yours does, don't worry about it. If it doesn't, don't worry about it. But as you can see, we have all these files here, and the next thing we're going to want to do is actually go out of this folder, go one back, and finally create our IntelliJ project. Don't worry guys, part 1 is almost over. We're just going to go new folder, and we're going to name this, well, I'm going to name it tutorial, just like this. Well, you guys can call it whatever you want your project to be called, and then I'm going to minimize this. Next up, I'm going to open up IntelliJ, click on new project, although it might look a little bit different for you guys. Click next right here, click next, making sure this isn't checked. And now I'm going to want to name my project. So I'm going to name this project tutorial, just like the name of the folder I created. Obviously, you guys could call it something else if you want. And next up, I want to choose the location of this. So I'm going to click these 3 dots, and then I'm going to go to tutorial right here. And now I'm just going to click on OK. So as you can see, it's creating this project inside of the tutorial folder. And finally, we just want to click finish. And it's warning me about this. This will not come up for you guys. That's just because I previously had a project called tutorial. I'm just going to click on yes, but this won't come for you guys. Don't worry about that. But anyways, once everything loads up, I'm just going to move this a little bit. As you can see, you should have this window right here. If not, just click on this or press Alt and then 1, and it should come up. And making sure this drop down is set to project, what we can do is actually just click on this little arrow. So as you can see, there's a bunch of little folders here, but the one that we're most concerned about is the src folder, because that's where all of our plugins code will be, and that's kind of just like the heart of our plugin. Now, before we do anything with the code, we're going to want to go to File, Project Structure, and then Modules, click on Dependencies, and then click this plus. Now we're going to click Jars or Directories, go to our Dependencies folder, and click on this Spigot API, because we're only going to need one for now. I believe you do need to check this export thing, but I don't know for sure. I'll put it on screen if you do or not. If you don't, then I'll tell you not to check this box, but either way, I'm just going to click on Apply, and then OK. And just like that, we've now imported our dependencies, and this icon has changed to a Spigot icon. So now, finally, after all of that, we can start programming. So I'm going to click on this src folder, right-click, New Package, and then I'm going to call this sprintkeys.tutorial, just like that. You can use capitals here, but I'm not going to, just because I like to keep package names all lowercase, and I'm going to press enter. So as you can see, the naming structure I followed here is com.myname.myprojectname. And if you guys need to rename this, just right click, click refactor, and then rename, and then you guys can change the name of it. You can change the name of this part. Refactoring you can pretty much rename anything with it. It's pretty nice. But anyways, once we have our package name created just like that, we can right click, click new Java class, and now we can create our main class. So I'm just going to call this tutorial with a capital T. Always capitalize your class names, guys. You technically can create them without capitalizing them, but it makes everything just so much easier if you need to like reference them and stuff if you capitalize them. So next, just press enter here, and it's created our tutorial class. So what we want to do here is actually, now before we do anything in this class, we want to go back to this src folder, right click, new file, and then call this plugin.yml. And in a second here, it should say, yeah, add missing properties. I'm not going to click that because this might not come up for you guys. If it doesn't, what you want to do is just type in a few things here. The first is main, and this is just a link to our main class so our server knows where all of our code is. So we're going to type in our package name and then our class name. So com.sprintkeys.tutorial, and then another dot, and then tutorial because we had a capital T here. Capitalization does matter, guys, so you need to make sure this is spelled correctly and with the correct capitalization. But anyways, next we need the name, and this is just the name of our plugin. Don't use spaces here. I don't think Spigot will accept those. But in the name here, I'm going to type in the plugin name, which is tutorial. Obviously, you guys can type in your plugin name. And then version, this is just the version of our plugin. So for me, it's 1.0. You could put an extra 0 there if you wanted to. And then API version. API version just says what version of Minecraft our plugin is developed for. So for me, it's 1.16. I know 1.16.5 is out. Even if like 1.17 comes out for this, I would still just type in 1.17. For 1.17.1, still 1.17. You guys get the idea. And finally, we need the author right here. Now, that's just going to be your name. So technically, this isn't required, but there's also things like website, for example, which also aren't required. Now, I'm just going to type in my name here, which is just Sprint Keys, but you guys want to type in your name. And finally, go back to your main class. And just like that, we are done with part 2. Now, the final step is part 3, which is our onEnable and onDisable, and I'll explain a little bit about the key components of those. So what we want to do right here is type in extends and then Java plugin. And if Java plugin doesn't come up there, that means you didn't correctly import the dependency. So make sure you've done that by going to File, Project, Structure, Modules, Dependencies, and making sure this is all imported correctly. And then anyways, you're going to want to press enter here. And now we have all of this set up and ready to go. So what we want to do is type in @override, making sure it's the java.lang version. And then we're going to want to type in public void onEnable, just like that. And what this method does is just calls code when our plugin is enabled. So for me, I'm going to want to make this send a message. But before I do that, I'm going to explain exactly what @override is for, because you guys might be wondering that. I'll make this quick. Basically, what it's for is there is an onEnable method in the Java plugin class, but we want ours to register instead of that one. So we want, because obviously we want this onEnable method here to work correctly. So we want to make sure that we had @override there to override the one found in the Java plugin class that we've extended. But anyways, with that done, now we can go into this onEnable class. And there's actually a few ways of sending a message. The main two I'd recommend are getlogger.log or .info, sorry. Or you could do .warn if you want to warn someone about something. But I'm going to do .info for now. And then I'm going to type in plugin enabled. However, oops, I spelled that wrong. Enabled. However, oh, I spelled that wrong again, guys. Give me a second there. Why do I keep... Alright, there. I give up at this point. There we go. Alright. But anyways, I'm not going to actually do it like this. I'm going to do it a different way. And that different way is get server.get console sender, which just gets the console command sender, .send message, which is just sending a message to the console. I think this is actually sending it as the console to the console. But anyways, now I'm going to actually add a chat color here. So I'm going to type in chat color dot, and then it'll give me a lot of options. I can do red, green, yellow, gray, white, and then all these colors right here. There's also italic, there's magic, which just makes like a bunch of weird, crazy text go all over the place. There's reset, which just resets things like magic. There is strike through, underline, a lot of stuff. But I want to type in green in all caps here, because I want this message to be green. And then plus, and then I'm going to type in the name of my plugin here in brackets. So tutorial, and then plugin enabled, just like that. Oops, why do I keep spelling stuff wrong today? But anyways, I'm just going to type in tutorial plugin enabled, and I'm going to leave a comment here saying enable message, just like that. And that's just going to let us know later, if you want to look back at this code, that this just tells us that our plugin's enabled in our onEnable function. It's good to comment your code. Do I ever do it? Absolutely not, because I'm a terrible programmer. I should. But yeah, it's a good idea to get into the habit of commenting your code. Anyways, what we can do is actually copy paste this. So Control C and then Control V. And now we're going to want to replace this onEnable, because we already created one, with onDisable. And you'll know you did it right if it highlights in yellow. That just means that it's actually going to call when the plugin's enabled or disabled. Because if I went down here and typed in public void A, and then I did this, well, as you can see, it's just going to show up as gray because it hasn't been accessed until I typed in A right here, and then it will. So I hear you saying, why are these showing up as yellow then? Because they're methods of the Java plugin class, and therefore will be called when the plugin's enabled. But anyways, right here, I want to change this color to red, change this to disabled, and finally, to keep things consistent, I want to type in disable message right here. So disable, just like that. So that now we know when our plugin has been enabled and disabled. And that's about it, but the final thing we have to do is go to File, Project Structure, and then go to Artifacts, click plus, jar, from modules with dependencies. Make sure you got your module selected here, which is just going to be your project name. You can just leave this main class blank, then click on OK. And as you can see, we have the jar right here, tutorial, and then jar. And next up, I want to click on this right here, this folder icon, this browse icon. And in here, we want to find our server and then plugins folder, because we want this to automatically go into the plugins folder of our server. So now I'm just going to click on apply and then OK. And now what we can do is click on build, build artifacts, and then build. And just like that, give this progress bar a second. It'll build everything, and bam, just like that, as you can see in here in our server folder and then plugins, we have our tutorial.jar file. So to test out if this code actually worked, I'm going to double click this run.bat. It'll run everything, give it a second, and if it worked, it should say something along the lines of plugin enabled. Oh fudge. It gave me an error here. It seems like a little mistake by me. I forgot to set the API version to 1.16 because that's what's out right now. I need to set that to 1.16. Not a problem though. I can just type in stop, press any key. Come on, give it a second. Build artifacts, build now that we've saved this all. And just like that, take two, here we go. As you can see, loading libraries. I was just dumb and it didn't work on take one. It should for you guys, just make sure you put in the right version. And as you can see, tutorial, plugin enabled, just like that. It didn't do it in color, it should for you guys. I don't know why it doesn't do that for me. But basically guys, yeah, that's all there is to it. You have just created your first plugin, and I can't wait to see what you guys come up with in future episodes. You guys can always in future episodes leave comments of like cool things you've done. I'm always happy to read them and heart them. And anyways guys, I hope you have a great rest of your day. I hope this video helped you out, and see you guys later.